Hello everyone, this is Pippin Williamson with Pippin's Pages and Pippin'sPlugins.com, and what I want to show you now is how we go about translating our WordPress plugins into another language. So in order to make life easier on all of our friends that don't speak English, or in your case if you speak another language, to make life easier on you, whenever we're developing a plugin, it is a best practice if we actually go ahead and localize the plugin and make it ready for translation. And what localization means and ready for translation means is basically providing all of the tools that someone needs who speaks a different language to go in and translate your plugin very, very easily. This process, the process of doing it, is actually pretty simple. Unfortunately, there's very, very, very little documentation or well done documentation on how you actually do this. I've been developing plugins for about 4 years now, and only this week did I actually go about doing enough research to really figure out how this works. Up until about a week ago, it had been kind of a fuzzy subject for me in that I didn't really know how it worked, so I just kind of stayed away from it. Well, I've come to the point where I realize that I need to actually go ahead and do this. So I spent a few hours researching it and figuring out how it works, and once you figure it out, it's really pretty easy. Unfortunately, like I said, there's very little good documentation on how to do it. So I would like to try and fix that with this tutorial. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through step by step how to translate a WordPress plugin. So we're actually going to start by translating part of my full screen background images Pro plugin. So what we're going to do is basically do a couple of things. The first thing is we have to go through and make sure the plugin is completely localized. What this means is that each of our strings or all of our text that's in our plugin needs to be made ready for translation. And this is pretty simple, and I'll show you how this works. Second is we have to provide a translation file. This is also pretty easy to do, but if you don't know how to do it and you haven't been able to follow the poor documentation that is out there, then this is going to be kind of difficult. So I'm going to try and explain that and make that really easy. And then I'm going to show you actually how to load a translated version of your plugin and how to actually change the language that WordPress is using for it. So the first thing is I want to show you a resource real quick, which is right here that I have loaded, and it's called WordPress in Your Language, and it has a lot of information about, one, how to translate WordPress. It's a little iffy, but it's there. Two, it has a repository of all of the language files that WordPress is currently translated into. These are really important because if you want to actually test your translation, you will have to load a language file, and you can actually see the repository is right here. I'll explain those again in just a little bit. But anyway, so there's a lot of information here, and I highly suggest that you go read through it so that you have a little bit better understanding of what we're going to be talking about. So the first thing I'm going to do is we're going to open up my full screen background images plugin. It's this plugin right here, and we're going to go about making sure that all of our text is ready to be translated. So we're going to translate this title, we're going to translate add new image, we're going to translate the title over here, these column headers, etc. So what we're going to do very first is we're going to open up the main plugin file, and we have this function right here. And this is basically what's going to do a lot of the magic, and it's called load plugin text domain. If you're working with a theme, it's load theme text domain. It's very similar. And it takes 3 parameters. The first one is the plugin name, or in this case, it can be the name of your plugin, so it could be full screen backgrounds, or in my case, I've used the abbreviation or the prefix, which is FSB. The second is a parameter that is actually technically depreciated now. It's as of 2.7, so this should always be set to false. And then the third parameter is the location of the folder where all of your language files are stored. The language files, you would have one for each language. So for example, there'd be one for German, one for Spanish, one for Czech, etc., etc. So in this case, this parameter is the location of your languages folder, which in my case is stored right here in the main plugin folder, and it's called languages. So you see here we are basically getting the path to the current file, and then it's /languages. So that's where all of our language files are going to be stored. So That's the first step. That will actually load the language for the plugin and load any translated files. The next thing that we need to do is we need to go through and localize all of our strings. So let me show you what that means. First thing we're going to do is we're going to go over here to the admin page .php, and this is, let me show you where this is. This is inside my includes folder. And let's take this title and this title over here, our menu titles, and translate them first. So you can see what I have here is basically the page name, as you see right here, full screen background image, and it's wrapped in this little function right here, underscore underscore, then parenthesis, the text that you want, comma, and then the plugin text domain. So remember, we have FSB over here, FSB over here. They need to match. So this is basically this will allow WordPress to actually go through automatically and find the translation for this string right here. So rather than manually changing every single one, we let WordPress do all the work for us, and we just say, okay, here's this string, here's the plugin text domain that I want to use, and go, basically it tells it to go search for the translated version of this string and we'll replace it with it. And then we have the same thing over here. Okay, so we've done that, and now what we do is we open up a little application called POEdit. This is a wonderful little application. It's free to download, and you can get it. It runs on Windows, Mac, Linux, and I think a couple other platforms as well. And it will actually allow us to create the translation files for our plugins. So what we're going to do is we're going to, in my case, I'm going to open the catalog I've already created. If you wanted, actually, you know what? No, let me show you how to create a brand new catalog real quick. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete these two files, and I'll show you what those are in just a moment. And I'm going to close this out, and now I'm going to reopen it. Okay, and we're going to go up here to the File menu, create new catalog, and our project name and version. It can really be anything. In this case, I'm just going to name it my prefix. Then you want to go over to the Paths menu, and what you need to remember is that this file that we're creating, which is going to be called the default.po file, is stored in the languages file. So what this is going to do is basically open up every single file in your plugin and search for these strings. It searches these strings based on keywords. So in this case, this is going to be basically be a keyword that POEdit is going to search for, so it can find this string. So we need to put in our base path as .. This means the parent directory of where we currently are. So in this case, we're in languages, so it's going to go back one directory. And now we need to add a path. We're going to use dot, which basically means current. So that's going to be the root plugin directory, because remember, we've gone back one directory. And then we're going to add in includes. That's because we have an includes directory where a lot of our files are stored. Next, we're going to go over to keywords, and we're going to it puts in some default ones right here, which we don't actually need. We can get rid of that one. We can get rid of that one. You may be using them, but I'm not. I'm going to add a new keyword. The first one is double underscore, because remember, we had double underscore right here. The second one is underscore E. Okay? And now, once you've done that, you open that up, and now you're going to save it inside of your languages folder. So you see I have full screen background / languages. Save. And now what it did is actually has gone through all of the plugins files and found every single string that matches that keyword. So we click OK, and now we have all of our strings in here. So the first one I want to point out is full screen background image and full screen BG image. Remember, those are the ones that I have right here. Okay, so what you would basically do in this case, this is going to be our default PO file, so we're not actually going to change anything in this. So we're simply going to go save, and now we have a saved default.po file. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to translate this into German. Now, note, I don't speak any German whatsoever. So I'm actually going to use gibberish, but I'm going to pretend that I'm translating this into valid German. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this string, and then down in this box, this is our translation. So I'm going to say this is the German name. and you can see that it actually put the translation in right here. So now I'm going to save this file as fsb-de_de. First of all, you have to prefix it with fsb hyphen. In FSB is the same thing that you used in your plugin text domain right here, and also in your strings right there. And then DE, the lowercase, is a language code for German. Capital DE is the country code for German. If you go over here to WordPress in your language, let me see if I can find it. Okay, I'm not sure where it is. Actually, let me show you another tutorial really quickly. My buddy, AJ Clark from WP Explorer, has written a tutorial on this as well for translating themes. So if you're working with a theme, I highly suggest that you go check out his tutorial. But anyway, down at the bottom, he has a link to language and country codes. So if we open up both of these, give him a second to load. There we go. So now we have the appendix of all of the language codes. So for example, if we just do a command Control F and search for German, we see that German is DE. And over here we have the country code. So if we search for Germany, we find that the country code is capital DE. So in our PO file, we saved it as, which you can see up here in the top, fsb-de_de.po. So let's go back over to our languages file. Directory, and you can see here's the PO file. Note it also created a .mo file. The mo file is technically the translation itself. PO file is the catalog that allows us to change the translations. So we have translated this text right here, full screen background image, into the German. Now, currently it's not actually German, but this will show you exactly how this works. Now what we need to do is we need to actually go change the language in WordPress. So if we load up this, if we go here right now, you'll see that there's no change whatsoever. But if we go to settings, actually real quick, before I do that, what you need to do is you need to go download the language file for the language you want to translate to. So we need to go to the WordPress language file repository. In this case, we're going to German, so we're going to go to German right here. We're going to go to the trunk, messages, and we're going to download de_de.mo, and we're going to save it inside of WP content languages. If you don't have a languages directory, you can create it, and it's going to be saved right here. You can see I actually already have it. If you don't do this, it won't actually, the translation won't actually work because it won't actually have the WordPress translation for German. So there are two ways that we can do this. If you're running multi-site, all you have to do is go over here to the general settings for your site, go down to the bottom and click Site Language. Click Save Changes. Now you can see that my site has been translated into German. If, however, you are running a non-multi-site install, what you need to do is you need to open up your WP config file and scroll down until you find this line, define WP language. And then what you're going to do is you're going to put in your language and your country code right there. So if I was running a single site install, this would translate my site into German, assuming that that this language file existed in the languages folder. In my case, I'm not running multi-site, so I'm going to restore that to default. So now my site is in German, and if I go to the Appearance or Design menu, that did not work. Okay, sorry, I had to figure that out really quickly. All I did is I simply forgot to save the file. So if we go back over here to my my PO edit, and we see we've got this string right here, full screen background image, and I say this is my German version. Click Save. Now refresh, and we see that this over here has changed to this is my German version. Second, notice that my buttons over here have actually already been translated. That's because those particular buttons, those strings, what I used there, which is edit and delete, already have translations within WordPress. But if I was to go in and change them inside of my PO file. So, for example, let's select delete. We'll just call it German. That should, oh, maybe, let's see. Let's go in here. Okay, so what I've got to do is I've got to go in here and change, find my delete again. Here it is. So that's my German version. Now, you'll notice that it didn't translate over here, which actually caught me off guard for just a moment. But then I remembered I haven't actually set up the text domain for this button right here. So I'm going to open up my file. It's called image list. And now go down until I can find the delete button. And here it is. And all I need to do is add in FSB like that. And now there's my translation just like that. But in this case, delete is not correct for German. I don't know what is, but it's definitely not just German. So if we remove that, now it just says delete. So we can actually very easily translate every single string within our plugin. So let me wrap up just a little bit, remind you of a couple things. First thing we need to do, load the plugin text domain. Next is we need to have our language files inside of languages right here. So we have this is our German file. This is our default file. Note that the default file is really just used so that you can give it to your plugin translators. So in this case, I have translators who are going to be translating to Spanish and a German for me. So I will give them this default.po file, and they will return one with the correct language translations. So we load the plugin text domain. Second, on every string, if it's a PHP string, and what that means is basically it's stored, it's not just echoed out, we're going to use a double underscore. If, for example, we have one, let me show you over here where it says add new image, this is actually basically just an echoed string. So if I was to remove this, it would just say add new image. But so we're going to replace this kind of string with this underscore e, which basically means go ahead and echo it out. So we have the string there, and then we have our text domain. And you're going to do that everywhere in every single string, with every string throughout your plugin. So if your plugin is large, this can be quite time consuming. I recommend doing this as you're actually developing the plugin. Don't wait until afterwards to go back and to change them all. I can tell you from experience that this takes quite a long time. So then what you have to do is you load up your WordPress languages file, and you can get that from the WordPress languages directory, and you save that inside of WP content languages. And then if you're in multi-site, you select your language under settings and general. In this case, I'm going to go back to English. And then if you are not in multi-site, you actually select your language from WP config by defining the language code here. Note that as soon as I changed back to English, my full screen background image changed. I mean, it translated back to English, so all of those strings have been automatically changed. And then inside of your PO file, you're basically going to take every single string here, you're going to go one by one, translate it, go to this one, put the translation here, go to this one, translate it, translate it, translate it, etc., etc., etc. So it can be kind of time consuming, but once you have it done, it works really, really well, and all of your friends who do not speak the language as you wrote the plugin will greatly appreciate it. So I highly encourage you to do this. Once again, if you are doing this for a theme, I suggest that you check out AJ's tutorial over here on how to localize and translate a WordPress theme. It works essentially exactly the same way, except that you have a slightly different function name. He also does really well at explaining where you should use each of these functions. So for example, here's where you should use underscore e. Here's where you should use just double underscore, etc., etc. He also explains really well about creating the PO and MO files. So if you're doing it for a theme, I highly suggest you follow his tutorial. If you're doing it for a plugin, I'm glad you're watching this. So I know that this probably sounds kind of complicated, and I'm sure at some point I've lost you here. So I hope with the text description down below the video that you'll be able to figure everything out. But once you get the grasp on it, it's really not very difficult, and it's pretty simple actually. You just load your plugin text domain and you provide the translated files. So let me know if you have any questions. Please leave comments below. Thanks for watching.